God, being there for me, first of all, just was such a wonderful movie. I loved the film. It was the first film set I ever was on. I went down with my dad and my brothers to visit my grandfather on the set. Peter Sellers, for me, it was just such a childhood, icon from the Pink Panther movies. So for me, my grandfather even being in a movie with Peter Sellers was the ultimate thrill for me. And just as a kid, it was just such an exciting experience to see them making a movie. I mean, little did I know it would turn out to be such an amazing film.
I'm Chance, the gardener.
The garden?
Yes. Ever since I was a child, I've worked in this garden.
I raised that boy since he was the size of a piston. Had no brains at all.
Reluctant to speak, huh?
Stuffed with rice pudding between the ears.
You don't play games with words.
Shortchanged by the Lord and dumb as a jackass.
I can't write.
Well, I heard he speaks 8 languages.
I can't read.
But I think he's brilliant.
I like to watch TV.
He's very, very sexy.
On television, Mr. President, you look much smaller.
It's for sure a white man's world in America.
My dad's father was Melvin Douglas, born in Georgia, and then he was with the Jesse Bonestell Players. I think he did his first work in Chicago, Midwest, that sort of area, went to New York, became a Broadway actor, was discovered by Gloria Swanson, brought to Hollywood, and then became a leading man, as we know, working with Greta Garbo, Myrna Loy, Jean Arthur, Joan Crawford, Merle Oberon. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It's all makeup. I asked Nurse Teresa to fix me up a bit. I didn't want the president to think I was going to die while he was talking to me.
He was very urbane and very funny. My first kind of childhood memory was, we would go up and spend the summer in Vermont with my grandfather. And, we were little kids, and it's very relaxed, and it's a camp-like atmosphere. And my grandfather would come down for coffee, and he would be wearing a kind of double-breasted, a silk bathrobe, looking pretty much like he looked in some of these movies from the 30s. Then, of course, as a teenager, then I really, sort of got it. I, would go down to visit in New York, and, he'd take me to a Broadway play, and then we'd go to Sardi's, and, then I really got it. I was like, oh, my grandfather must be somebody really important.
Oh, I've been labeled a kingmaker, but I've tried to keep myself open to the voice of the people.
He would always tell me a movie that he was going to be in as a story. So he'd say, listen to this story. And then I remember being in the New York apartment, and he told me the story of being there. He read the book, and he said, it's about this man. And at that point, of course, I had no idea that it was Peter Sellers. He told me, about this man named Chauncey Gardner. And the story was just immediately engaging.
That old man is lying up there, dead as hell. And it just don't make any difference to you.
A man has died, and this guy has to leave his house. And you're very upset almost immediately that what is going to happen to this poor guy who doesn't seem to have any understanding of the real world. And he steps outside, and he has all these interactions with people.
Excuse me, I'm very hungry. Could you give me some lunch?
Another moment that stayed with me as a kid is where he has the clicker, and he clicks at the kid, trying to get him to change the channel. I remember watching that scene and thinking, this is a very strange movie. Like, what is happening?
Now move, Honky. Slice that before I cut your white ass.
If I see Raphael, I will give him your message.
And it's almost a sense of relief when Shirley MacLaine, hits him and takes him in the car.
We'll take him to a hospital.
Mr. Gardner, welcome to Rand Memorial Hospital.
Thank you.
Part of the reason my grandfather even got the part was that he and Peter Sellers had this very long cyclical relationship. This was after he'd finished Two-Faced Woman. He'd joined the army. He was stationed in Burma, and the first night that he gets there, guy who's in the British Army, Peter Sellers, they set up a dinner because Peter Sellers is sort of funny, and they think that he'll entertain this famous movie star. Peter Sellers is overwhelmed, like he can't believe Melvin Douglas. He just saw him in, Two-Faced Woman. And so when his name came up in the 70s, because there were different people that they were talking to and that maybe the studio wanted, Peter Sellers, said, "No, I want Melvin Douglas. We have this relationship. I think he'll be the person for the role." And another story I heard is that they oftentimes on the set they would reminisce about being stationed in Burma and tell stories. So I think it just added again to the warmth of that relationship. My father and my brothers and I, we took this road trip to go to Asheville, North Carolina, where they were shooting it. And I mean, when you drove up to that mansion, it was like nothing I'd ever seen in my life. And they really captured, I think, in the movie, the sense of the scope of how big that place was, because it was huge.
Does this house have a garden? Oh, why, yes, many.
Another thing I love about the movie is that there's a lot of, sort of master shots. There's not a lot of, close-ups like the way that there is today. And so you get the sense of the house, of how big it is, of how dwarfed they are, sometimes by the landscape, by the garden. And the fact that he has a hospital ward, in the mansion was another kind of a remarkable feature.
I've never seen anything like this on television.
I love the scene where they're eating dinner and the table is just immense.
Well, I do hope your injury won't prevent you from attending to business, Mr. Gardner.
And also, it's turn of the century. It was very dark. So the DP, Caleb Deschanel, I just think he captured in the mansion the wood and the richness of the wood and the sense of old money. And it was just beautiful, beautifully shot.
You can put lots of pillows behind you in this practice if you've already been with me. Put lots of pillows behind.
Being there is kind of crazy, and it's pure Hal Ashby. And, Hal Ashby seemed to me in some of his movies like Coming Home or Shampoo, there was an understanding of human nature that is profound, that we're really missing. He'd been an editor, so the editing in the film is really good. But I hope that this will, bring back his name a little bit in terms of, what a great director he was. When I was a kid and watching movies, Shampoo, Coming Home, being there, I mean, Hal Ashby to me was just in the pantheon of great 70s directors. I mean, when you think of him, you think of the great Oscar-winning performances.
I love you very much, Robert. And you really are a gardener, aren't you? I am a gardener.
For me, when you watch the film, I guess the big mystery to everybody, why didn't Peter Sellers win an Oscar? But I got to watch a little of him, work, and he was this person. I mean, when he acted, it seemed to me almost as if he went into another dimension. And as I watch some of the scenes, you feel it's so private that it's almost embarrassing sometimes to watch. And there's the great scene in the elevator. And it's, you're uncomfortable and you're laughing, and he's just so in that character that it is so real.
Excuse me.
That it just does not seem as if he's acting. And I think that it was his life's work. I mean, I have a record of Peter Sellers talking, and this is way before he did Being There. And the last question, that he was talking about is he says, I feel as if I have one more great character in me, and I don't know what it is. And I think that character, was being there. And another thing that I remember that he said was that the only enjoyment he ever had was when you were working on the floor, when you were doing it, when you were in the scene, not before and not after, but when you were in the scene. And in being there more than any other movie, you just feel a sense of joy and a sense of freedom, that the cameras aren't there and we're really, something is being revealed in that movie. And I think it transcends to Shirley MacLaine, to Jack Warden, to everyone. That character is so strong that it really does affect everybody else, I think, in the film.
I understand.
First of all, just on an emotional level, to see that ending as a kid, that is one of those scenes that you think, I want to make movies, I want to do something special like that. So, when a movie does that to you, that's really exciting. The original ending was that they're at the funeral and you see Shirley MacLaine, and he apparently goes with Shirley MacLaine and they walk off in the woods, and we know that they're together, and it would end with Jack Warden talking.
And that no accountant can audit life in our favor.
My understanding, which I heard from Caleb Deschanel, was that the ending came about because they were watching a scene with my grandfather and Peter Sellers in which they're walking down the hall. And at one point, they were so close that they were walking as if they were one in time. And Caleb sort of nudged Hal and said, look at how they're walking. The reflection, it's as if they're, walking on water. And how I had heard it was that Hal had an epiphany to change the ending and have him be walking on water, which to me is such a great, magical ending. And there are a lot of little religious overtones in the film, and they may have been accidental. Sometimes that's what I love about the movie. I don't think there was a deliberate attempt, to put these biblical references in the film, and yet they're there. You have a man who's on his deathbed, and he says, let me feel your strength, and her name is Eve, and he's a gardener, and talks about, growing and the walking on the water. And I think there are a lot of kind of spiritual, I would say, references in the film.
A garden needs a lot of care and a lot of love. But first, some things must wither. Some trees die.
He's a gardener.
As you watch the movie now, and it comes up again and again, that a movie like that, which was a social comedy, has become now like a documentary.
Oh, he was very clever, keeping it at a third-grade level. That's what they understand.
Yeah?
It's really become such an example of our society.
Few men in public life have the courage not to read the newspapers. None that this reporter has met have the guts to admit it.
All you gotta be is white in America to get whatever you want.
It was quite an experience being on that film, and I think of it a lot in terms of the longevity of my grandfather's career. He won his first Oscar for HUD at 62, won his second Oscar for being there. I think he was about 78 or 79 years old.
You have the gift of being natural. That's a great talent, my boy.
He really did. He wanted to be an actor for for his life. He never wanted to retire, and I have the same feeling. Being there. As I get older, I understand it. To me, it's being. It's sort of being in the moment. That's how I interpret it. For me, what does the title really mean? I don't know. But to me, it's a sense of acceptance. Life is a state of mind. I mean, I think of that all the time when Jack Warden says that. But everything about being there, to me, is really amazing.
Life is a state of mind.
I'm Chance, the gardener.
The gardener?
Yes. Since I was a child, I worked in this garden.
Then you really are a gardener.
Oh, yes.
May I ask your name?
Chancey Gardner.
Mr. Chancey Gardner. Are you related to Basil and Perdita Gardner?
No, I'm not related to Basil and Perdita.
Gobbledygook.
You know, Chauncey, there's something about you. You don't play games with words to protect yourself.
Had no brains at all. The stuff with rice pudding between the ears.
On television, Mr. President, you look much smaller.
Dumb as a jackass.
As long as the roots are not severed, all is well, and all will be well in the garden.
In the garden. Coffin, I'll leave some information on Mr. Chauncey Gardner's background. What do you mean he's got no background? That's impossible.
Listen to that boy.
Mr. Gardner, the New York Times spoke of your peculiar brand of optimism. What was your reaction to that?
I do not know what it means.
Oh, he was very clever, keeping it at a third grade level. That's what they understand.
He's very, very sexy. But I think he's brilliant.
I raised that boy.
It's always somewhat surprising to find men like yourself working so intimately with the president and yet somehow managing to remain relatively unknown.
Yes, it is surprising.
And look at him now.
I can't write.
I heard he speaks 8 languages.
I can't read.
I like to watch TV.
All you gotta be is white in America to get whatever you want.
I understand.
Being there, made in the USA.